Luciano Frattolin, a 45-year-old Canadian entrepreneur from Montreal, stands accused of a crime so heinous it defies comprehension. The murder of his 9-year-old daughter, Melina Frattolin, during a vacation in upstate New York in July 2025. Frattolin reported Melina missing, claiming she was abducted from a parking lot near Lake George. But police soon unraveled his chilling lie. Her body was found concealed under a log in a shallow pond in Ticonderoga, New York, and Frattolin now faces charges of second-degree murder and concealment of a corpse. In this documentary, we dive deep into the twisted psyche of a man who called his daughter the light of his life, yet extinguished her in an act of unimaginable brutality. Through the lens of psychology and psychoanalysis, we'll dissect the motives, the mind, and the madness behind this horrific crime. Imagine a quiet, moonless night in the Adirondacks, where the air is thick with the scent of pine and the distant hum of Interstate 87. A father's frantic 911 call pierces the silence, claiming his little girl has been snatched by strangers in a white van. But the truth is far darker. Luciano Frattolin didn't lose his daughter to a faceless predator. He was the predator. His crime wasn't just a murder. It was a calculated betrayal, a father's love twisted into something monstrous. We chose Frattolin for this documentary because his case is a psychological enigma. The brutality of his act, killing his own child and staging an abduction, screams a mind fractured by unseen forces. This isn't just a crime story. It's a descent into the abyss of human psyche, where love and violence collide in a way that demands answers. On July 19th, 2025, Frattolin allegedly strangled or bludgeoned his 9-year-old daughter Melina and hid her lifeless body under a log in a remote pond, her small frame submerged in shallow water, her striped shirt and Adidas sneakers now evidence of father's unthinkable betrayal. The sheer audacity of his lie, a fabricated kidnapping, makes this case a psychological puzzle we can't ignore. Let's step back and peer into the mind of Luciano Frattolin, a man whose polished exterior masked a darkness that would erupt in the most horrific way. Born in the remote Ethiopian village of Gambella to an Ethiopian mother and an Italian father, Frattolin's childhood was a tapestry of contrasts. He described running through rows of crimson coffee buds in Ethiopia, juxtaposed with the neoclassical grandeur of Milan. His biography on the Gambella Coffee website paints him as a worldly entrepreneur, steeped in humanities and social sciences, driven by a passion for justice and community. But beneath this curated image lies a more troubling story. Psychoanalytically, Frattolin's dual cultural upbringing could have seeded a sense of identity fragmentation. Erik Erikson's theory of identity crisis suggests that individuals straddling multiple cultural identities may struggle to form a cohesive sense of self, especially if faced with rejection or isolation. Frattolin himself admitted to experiencing racism and alienation as a child due to his mixed ethnicity, which may have planted seeds of shame or resentment deep in his psyche. These early wounds, left unhealed, can fester into what Carl Jung called the shadow, the repressed, darker aspects of personality that emerge under stress or trauma. Frattolin's adult life seemed successful on the surface. He founded Gambella Coffee, a socially conscious brand, and boasts of achievements in architecture, real estate, and mining. Yet his website hints at a personal unraveling. In 2019, an unfortunate event severely impacted his well-being, though details remain vague. This event, coinciding with his estrangement from Melina's mother, suggests a significant psychological rupture. Attachment theory, pioneered by John Bowlby, posits that disruptions in close relationships, especially with partners or children, can trigger profound emotional dysregulation. For Frattolin, losing his marriage and full-time access to Melina, who lived with her mother in Montreal, may have intensified feelings of abandonment or powerlessness. Psychoanalyst Melanie Klein's concept of the depressive position could apply here. Frattolin may have internalized his ex-wife rejection as a personal failure, projecting that pain onto Melina, the living symbol of their broken bond. What drives a man to kill his own child? From a psychological perspective, filicide, the act of a parent killing their child, often stems from a toxic blend of narcissism, rage, or a desperate need for control. Frattolin's public persona as a loving father who called Melina the light of his life reeks of narcissistic idealization. Narcissistic personality disorder, as outlined in the DSM-5, involves a grandiose sense of self, a need for admiration, and a lack of empathy. Frattolin's social media and business profiles scream of self-aggrandizement, portraying him as a global visionary. But narcissists often view others, even their children, as extensions of themselves. Melina, in his eyes, may have been less a person and more a mirror for his own identity. When that mirror reflected something he couldn't control, perhaps her growing independence or a primary bond with her mother, his fragile ego may have shattered, unleashing a rage that culminated in murder. The choice of Melina as his victim wasn't random. Psychoanalytically, she represented both his greatest love and his deepest wound. Sigmund Freud's concept of the return of the repressed suggests that suppressed emotions, anger, shame, or grief can erupt in destructive ways. Frattolin's estrangement from Melina's mother since 2019 likely fueled resentment, and Melina, living full-time with her mother, may have become a symbol of his loss of control. The vacation, a 10-day trip through New York City, Connecticut, and Saratoga Springs, was supposed to be a chance to reclaim his role as her father. Surveillance footage from July 19, 2025, shows him at a restaurant in Saratoga Springs at 5:30 p.m., Melina appearing healthy and content, as she called her mother to say they were heading back to Montreal. But something snapped in the hours that followed. Captain Robert McConnell of the New York State Police noted that Melina was killed sometime after a phone call with her mother and before Frattolin's 911 call at 9:58 p.m. That narrow window, mere hours, suggests an impulsive, rage-driven act, possibly triggered by a perceived slight or a moment of psychological overwhelm. The method of murder is as chilling as it is revealing. While the autopsy results are pending, the criminal complaint states that Frattolin concealed Melina's body under a log in a shallow pond near Eagle Lake in Ticonderoga, about 30 miles from where he claimed she was abducted. The act of hiding her body suggests both premeditation and shame. From a psychological perspective, this concealment aligns with what forensic psychologists call undoing, a symbolic attempt to erase the crime or distance oneself from it. Frattolin's choice to submerge her in water, a universal symbol of purification in Jungian psychology, could indicate an unconscious desire to cleanse himself of guilt. But the brutality of the act, likely strangulation or blunt force trauma, given the lack of reported gunshot wounds, points to a visceral, hands-on rage. Forensic psychologist Dr. Catherine Ramsland notes that such methods often reflect a personal, emotionally charged motive, as opposed to the detachment of a firearm. Frattolin didn't just kill Melina, he destroyed her with his own hands, a final, savage assertion of control. The abduction story Frattolin fed to police was a masterclass in manipulation, but it crumbled under scrutiny. He claimed he stopped near exit 22 of Interstate 87 to urinate, leaving Melina in the car, only to return and find her gone, with a suspicious white van speeding away. Later, he added that 2 men forced her into the van. These inconsistencies, as Captain McConnell pointed out, tipped off investigators. From a psychological angle, this lie reveals Frattolin's need to deflect blame and maintain his loving father facade. Borderline personality traits, such as fear of abandonment and unstable self-image, may have driven him to craft a narrative that painted him as a victim. His 911 call, described as frantic by the Warren County Sheriff's Office, was likely a performance to buy time and sympathy. But the Amber Alert, issued at 10 p.m. on July 19th, was canceled by Sunday morning as police zeroed in on him, using technology and witness accounts to trace his movements to Ticonderoga. Witnesses and media reports paint a haunting picture. The Warren County Sheriff's Office received over 800 calls from the public during the Amber Alert, reflecting the community's desperation to find Melina. New York Governor Kathy Hochul called the case heartbreaking, mourning the loss of a child who was supposed to be safe with her father. A post on X by Alice From Queens captured the public's shock. A lot going on, as we used to say, in Luciano Frattolin's bio. He told police his daughter was abducted. Her body was found a few hours ago. He's now the main suspect. The discovery of Melina's body by New York State Forest Rangers at 1:50 p.m. on July 20th was a gut punch. One ranger, quoted anonymously in the Times-Union, described the scene. She was so small, tucked under that log like she was just sleeping. I'll never unsee it. The image of Melina's body, hidden in the shallow water, Her life snuffed out by the one person meant to protect her is a nightmare etched into the collective psyche. What pushed Frattolin to this point? Psychologically, filicide often stems from a perfect storm of stressors: financial strain, relationship breakdown, or a loss of identity. Frattolin's website hints at financial troubles, noting 5 lawsuits filed in 2025, including one where he's being sued for $83,000 by a bank. This pressure, combined with his estrangement and limited access to Melina, may have created a sense of existential despair. Existential psychologist Irvin Yalom argues that confronting one's mortality or failure can trigger destructive behavior in those unable to cope. Frattolin's claim of a life-changing event in 2019, followed by a long and arduous recovery, suggests a man grappling with his own demons. Yet, instead of healing, he turned his pain outward, targeting the one person who tethered him to his lost identity as a father. The crime scene itself is a psychological roadmap. The remote pond in Ticonderoga, far from the bustling tourist haven of Lake George, suggests Frattolin sought isolation to commit and conceal his act. Forensic psychology highlights that such secluded locations often reflect a killer's need for control over the narrative. By choosing a pond near Eagle Lake, Frattolin ensured Melina's body wouldn't be found immediately, buy him time to spin his abduction tale. The log used to conceal her body adds another layer. It's a deliberate act of dehumanization, reducing his daughter to an object to be hidden. This aligns with object relations theory, which posits that individuals with severe personality disorders may struggle to see others as fully human, especially under stress. Melina, in that moment, may have become a symbol of everything Frattolin felt he'd lost: his marriage, his status, his control. Frattolin's arrest on July 21st, 2025, was swift but grimly inevitable. Booked into Essex County Jail at 2:04 a.m. He was arraigned later that day in Ticonderoga Town Court, where a not guilty plea was entered on his behalf. The public defender's office, overwhelmed by the case's gravity, offered no immediate comment. Police noted Frattolin's lack of prior criminal history or domestic violence, which makes his crime all the more jarring. From a psychoanalytic perspective, this absence of a record suggests a latent pathology where repressed impulses simmered beneath a polished facade until they erupted. Frattolin's next court appearance is set for July 25th, but a legal outcome feels secondary to the moral weight of his actions. The community's response, a candlelight vigil planned in Montreal, reflects a collective need to grieve and make sense of the senseless. Philosophically, Frattolin's story is a descent into what Albert Camus called the absurd. Camus argued that humans seek meaning in a world that often offers none, and Frattolin's crime feels like a rebellion against that void. His act of filicide, followed by a fabricated abduction, suggests a man desperate to impose a narrative on a life spiraling out of control. Yet, this rebellion came at the cost of his daughter's life, raising questions about free will and responsibility. From a Nietzschean perspective, Frattolin's actions could be seen as a perverse assertion of power. With a power turned inward and destructive, he sought to reclaim control by destroying what he could no longer possess: Melina's love, her future, her existence. But in doing so, he obliterated any claim to humanity, leaving behind a legacy of horror. As we close this documentary, the image of Melina's body in that shallow pond lingers like a ghost. Her father, once her protector, became her executioner, driven by a psyche fractured by loss, shame, and rage. The psychological autopsy of Luciano Frattolin reveals a man undone by his own contradictions, a loving father whose love was a lie, a visionary whose vision turned to violence. For Melina, there is no justice that can undo her fate. Only the hope that her story forces us to confront the darkness within. What drives a parent to kill? The answer lies not just in Frattolin's mind, but in the fragile, terrifying complexity of the human soul. As Captain McConnell said, this is a heartbreaking investigation. And for those of us left to ponder it, it's a reminder that sometimes the monsters we fear most are the ones we call family.